you're in the right webinar. We're going to start with a 30,000-foot view, and then we're going to start diving into a little more detail about Sumo Logic. So let's get started. Let me close this poll, get rid of these results, and let's jump right in it. So a little bit of housekeeping. My name is Mario Sanchez. I run training here at Sumo Logic. And you probably noticed that you're in mute, and this is on purpose. Just to avoid distractions, I've muted all of you. But if you have a question, by all means, feel free to either send it through the chat, and I will respond to your questions as I go through it, or there will be a Q&A session at the end as well for us to be able to go through this. So feel free to interrupt me with questions. I'm more than happy to take them as we go. One of the things I'll let you know is I will be recording the session, and I will be sharing with you both the recording as well as the slides. I'm going to try to not show as many slides. I'm going to try to be in the product as much as possible, but the slides are there in case you guys want to take a look at them as well. So let's get started. The idea today is for you to, at the end of this session, be able to understand the data collection topic. And notice that this is an administrative topic. I'm going to switch here for just a second. Most of you probably went to this page, sumologic.com/training, to register. And there's a trifecta of sessions that we follow. The first one is the one you're attending, Sumo Logic QuickStart. And this is for everyone. This is for you to start getting the basics. There is a second session called Setting Up Sumo Logic. Setting Up Sumo Logic, it's all about data collection. It's about your deployment options. It's about optimization tools. So today we're going to cover this very, very lightly. Just know that there is another session that focuses specifically on setting up Sumo Logic, and then a third session that digs deeper into advanced analytics. I'm going to give you a preview of some of those today, but the idea with this session today is to get you started with a searching, get you started with a parsing and the analyzing. Now, searching, parsing, and analyzing are just a stepping stone. At the end of the day, what you really, really want to do is you want to make Sumo Logic work for you, and you're going to do this through dashboards. You're going to do this through alerts. So I'm going to show you how to visualize and how to start monitoring your data through these tools that are available to you. And last but not least, there is a lot of content that is out of the box. We've been around. We've seen quite a few customers and what they need from the different sources. So we provide you a whole host of apps that are available in my library. So today I'm going to show you how to take advantage of some of that content. All right? So let's get started. For those of you who are brand spanking new to Sumo, let's start with a 30,000-foot view. What is Sumo Logic? In short, we are a data analytics company. We're able to bring your data into Sumo and give you insights into whether it is logs or metrics that you're sending to Sumo. There are three main use cases that most of our customers use us for. The first one is DevOps. So you're creating code and you're trying to assess. Oops, sorry about that. You're trying to assess through your logs whether you squashed a bug or not. The other one here is you are part of an IT group or so an operations team, and you want to monitor your entire stack and you want to keep an eye on everything. And the third one is from a compliance and security perspective. Are all your systems, can you audit all the systems? Is everything within compliance? Most of our customers start with one of this use case, and the natural transition is that they move into another use case along the way. The question is, what kind of data can we bring in? And the story is we can bring logs and metrics from everywhere. And here's some examples of the different tools that generate some of this data. Tidbit of information, we've actually hired quite a few people from these different organizations to enhance our expertise in those areas. But the idea, like if you see this screen here on the left-hand side, you could have your stack starting from at the bottom, you have your network, your virtual environment, your operating system, all the way up to your custom application code. Or on the right-hand side, you could have your infrastructure information as well. And all of these are generating logs or generating metrics. All this stuff can be brought into Sumo Logic for analytics. So let's start from a high level, 30,000-foot view. Sumo Logic is broken into three main areas. One is data collection, getting that data into Sumo Logic. So your first step, or probably for those of you who are administrators, is how do I send data to Sumo Logic? We're not going to spend a lot of time in here. As I mentioned, there is a whole session that focuses specifically on that. What we're going to be spending most of our time is here in number 2 and number 3. How to search that data, how to analyze it, how to visualize that data, and do something with it. Sorry, I'm just making sure that I'm sharing my screen, and I am. Okay, so with that said, from a data collection perspective, at least I want to give you the big picture so that you understand what's going on in there. This could be a typical customer. This could be you. You've got a whole bunch of servers. You want to send that data over to Sumo Logic. There's two ways that we can do that. We can do it through what we call an installed collector, in which case you install a small agent on your host. And this host, you tell it where the log files sit, and we can grab them and send them over to Sumo Logic. Or you could have what we call a hosted collector. In this case, the collector sits on the Sumo Logic cloud, and from your side, you just have some custom script, let's say a curl, a script that's doing a curl command, to just do an HTTP post over to us. One of the things that you have to keep in mind is every single message that comes into Sumo Logic gets tagged with these 5 metadata fields. We take the name of the collector that this data came through, the source where that data came from, whether it came from Apache Access or Apache Error, the source host, in this case it would be host A, the source name, which is the actual log file, including the path of where that data came from, and something that we call source category, which is a designation that could be anything that you want. Why do we tag these things? Because you might want to search only the data for a particular source host, or only the data that came in through a collector. Or if you play your cards right, and a lot more of this information in future sessions, you can set up a source category that is easily that is pretty meaningful for you. Here's an example of a source category that I'm using. Notice that my different sources, my host A and B have Apache web servers. My host C has IIS web servers. I can create a source category that is something like web server / Apache / access, or web server / Apache / error, or in this case, web server / IIS / W3C. The reason I would want to choose a source category like that is because then I can run queries that say, okay, show me only data where source category equals WS Apache access, in which case it would search for data across host A and host B. Or I could say WS Apache star, in which case I would search all access and error log files in here. Or I could even say WS star. In that case, it doesn't care about brand. It would search across multiple hosts for all my web server data. So you start seeing how a robust naming convention for your source category is going to make it pretty easy for you guys to search. And we'll get into that in just a second. Before I go into search and analyze, for most of you that are brand spanking new to Sumo, you probably came into a screen that looks something like this. You have the ability to start searching, but before you start searching, you might not even know what to search for. So if you go to Manage Collection, this is where you're going to see everything that has been set up from a collection perspective, the data that is coming over. Remember how I was talking about hosted collectors versus installed collectors? Do I have any installed collectors here? Let me not expand any of these. Looks like all my collectors are hosted collectors. But yeah, this is where you can start seeing where I'm pulling, let's say, my Artifactory data. It's a hosted collector, and this here is my source category. So if I wanted to find my Artifactory access data, this is what I would be searching for. As a matter of fact, we make it pretty simple, and we give you this little icon in here that if you click on it, it takes you to that query and it says, okay, show me all the data that has a source category of Artifactory / access. So that's how we go about searching for this data. All right. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about about how do you go about searching in Sumo. But before I do, I want to show you a quick demo of Sumo so that you can see the end product. Remember how I was telling you how searching and parsing and analyzing is just a stepping stone of where you want to get. At the end of the day, you want to get Sumo to work for you. You want to get Sumo to alert you of what's going on. You want to have some dashboards that show you the trends, and you want to have all this information already set up. So let me show you. I guess if you're thinking of it as a cooking show, I'm going to show you the cooked meal first, and then we're going to go back and show you how to build that stuff. So I'm going to show you a demo that walks through 3 stages. The first one is I receive an alert that is notifying me of some critical event, and that alert is going to point me to some dashboard so that I can get a little more insight. through that alert, I'm going to start looking at my metrics to identify the what is going on. So notice I first start with metrics. I can see what's going on in my environment from a business perspective, what's going on. And then I'm going to correlate it to the meaningful logs to understand why, the why is happening. So the difference here is metrics help me understand what is going on. Logs help me understand why this is happening so that I can take action on that stuff. Okay, so I'm going to show you, I have this fake customer here called Travelogic, and this could be a customer just like you guys. It's using microservices, it's got my containers in the back end, it's got Kubernetes, Docker. What I'm doing here is I'm having a lot of little services connect, and I want to be able to manage the health of my environment, right? So I want people to be able to book their flights, book their hotels. I don't want to have downtime in this kind of stuff. So with that said, I'm using Sumo Logic in the back end to track this stuff. Let me show you, I'm going to go here and show you the kind of messages that I would get in Slack if I've set it up correctly. Let me just go in here and go all the way to the bottom and show you the latest message. So this is, for example, how I would receive a message from Sumo. It's coming, I've renamed it, it says Travelogic Ops, but in short it's telling me, listen, there is some spike or some outlier going on. Here is the link to the results if I want to go look at the results that came back from a particular search so that I can see why this results triggered it. Or we could also embed what we're doing here, some dashboard link so that I can go find a little more information. So again, the story is I manage this website called Travelogic. I'm the IT ops for this kind of stuff. I've just gotten an alert that is showing that something is going on in my environment. I can click on any of these to go directly to it. I'm going to cheat here a little bit, but I had opened it already for us. Let me just refresh it because I inserted a whole bunch of errors into this environment. So we'll see, we might see a little bit more red in just a little bit. Okay, so either I received an alert that is telling me that something is going on, or I have this dashboard in my operations center displayed up and right in front of me, and I'm starting to see a lot of reds. But very clearly, Sumo is helping me identify that something is going on. It's giving me information that something is not right in my environment. And what you see here is an overview. I'm running my operations. I want to get a good picture of everything that is going on. You notice that in this dashboard, I'm getting data from multiple sources. Here's my ELB response times. Here's the 500s that I'm getting. This is my database issues. If you're an AWS shop, this could be your RDS, and it's showing you what database issues you have. Here's my VPC network rejects, transaction times, what's going on with my admin. So in short, you could have dashboards pulling data from multiple systems to create your operational overview dashboard. On top of these like infrastructure level dashboard or panels that I have here, I also have my services. Remember how I was telling you that that Travelogic website is built with microservices or services? Here's my checkout service, here's my product service, my reporting nodes. It looks like I'm getting about 7,000 checkout services. So clearly, people are not being able to check out. Maybe they go through the motions of, let me go back to that site. Maybe they go through the motions of looking for flights, looking for all that stuff, but at the end of the day, they're having issues checking out, and that's what this is showing me here. So let's go dig a little bit deeper and find out what's going on. I'm going to click on this panel here, and the way that we've had it set up for this customer is we go into a little more detail of that services, in particular of all the different services that I'm running. And I have here a little more information. It's a lot of information to take at once, so let me try to walk you through it. What this one on the top left-hand side is showing me, see this one's called bookings. Let me just expand this one so you can see this panel a little more. This green area is showing me, if you look at that 76, that bubble is showing me that at this particular point in time at 9:55, I had 76 bookings. See where it says metric equals sum of success, so that my count of successes was pretty high and was pretty normal. But somewhere around just a little bit before 10 a.m., and that's right before I started the webinar, I actually inserted some errors on this. so that I can show you this, you start seeing a big spike in the fails. Look at this. The metric says right at the bottom on that bubble, it says metric equals sum of fail count. So this is the count of failures, of failed bookings that I have had. So clearly, something's going on in my environment. People were able to book flights before, or car or hotel, and then all of a sudden it looks like I'm still having some successes because I have a green area here, but I have a lot of failures happening as well. A lot of people are not being able to book. So you're starting to see how I'm using metrics to identify the what is happening in my environment, what's going on. I can see here that I have a gateway latency, so things were going good, and somewhere around 10 a.m., I'm starting to have some gateway latency. Those pink triangles are spikes, or they're outliers. They're outside of my standard deviation, and it's identifying it as well. I'm going to bounce here to the bottom left and show you the errors by node. It's starting to show me that I have some nodes. Let me just expand this a little bit. But this is showing me how I'm having some here are the errors for the travel product service, and that node is not having that many issues. But here's one called the travel checkout node, and it's clear that this one is having some issues. And here's another travel checkout node that is also having some issues. So again, remember how I have different services, different nodes. Clearly, these two nodes are having quite a bit of error. So I'm starting to use this dashboard to identify the fact that, all right, people can't book. There's something going on with my travel checkout service that I need to look at. I'm going to speed this up a little bit and go here to the top right-hand side where I can see now some other metrics, CPU and total memory. And if I look at this one, let me just make it a little bit bigger here. If I look at this, it looks like most of the stuff was going well, but then I have a bit of a drop in here. One of the cool things about this is that for any of these panels, I can actually dive into the specifics behind it by clicking on that particular icon. And then I can go and see and play with the metrics themselves and test it out a little bit if I want to. Oops, sorry, I meant to go in here. All right, so what you're seeing here is the query that was run in that dashboard, that was being represented in that dashboard. This is showing my CPU and my total memory. Total memory is this line down at the top. If you notice, it says metric equals sum of memory usage. Things look normal, so I'm just going to turn off memory here for just a second so that I don't have to worry about it, and my graph is a little cleaner. What you see now, though, is that all my nodes seem to be in decent behavior all the way up to almost 957. But then around 957, I have two nodes that just spike up in CPU usage. It looks like, again, it's my travel checkout node, and it's two of my travel checkout nodes that are having some issue in here. So I'd like to find out a little bit more of what's going on. Here is where the magic happens. All right. Now I know what metrics clearly are telling me that people can't book. It's now obvious that it's because there are some CPU issues with my environment where I'm having a couple of nodes take a lot of resource. I'm going to dive to the metrics themselves and try to correlate this. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to go and say, all right, show me data for my source category equals. And since I know that it's the travel checkout node that's giving me the issue, I'm going to focus on that data in particular. So show me the logs for the travel checkout node for this same time period. And if I just run that query, it's going to go and run that query and come back with a think of this as a heat map. The darker the color, that means that there are more logs in that particular time. So here, when things were normal, I was just getting an average number of logs. But then at some point, I started getting a lot more logs somewhere around that same time frame, 950, 955, 958, 959. Even more interesting, what if I now just look at logs that have the word error in it? So here is the same search, but now I'm saying just give me those that have the word error. And what you see is I had no errors before, but now I have quite a bit of errors in here. I can do two things from here. Clearly, I want to look at the errors so that I can see what's going on. So I can click on any of these boxes, and it'll show me the errors in here. So let's skim through it. This one says I have some sort of an invalid key ID. This one here is giving me some unable to book flight, Qantas error such and such, invalid key. This one is giving me some SSL routine, SSL certificate issue, certificate verify failed. So you notice how it's starting to show me here's another issue with a certificate. Here's yet another issue with a certificate. So if I start going down this, it's possible that the same error repeats over and over, and it's kind of making it hard for me to identify what is the cause of this error. I now identified 2 or 3 different errors that repeat over and over, but what is causing this error? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a shift click, as it's mentioned here in this little icon. If I do a shift click, it's going to take me to the world of search. So now I'm searching for source category equals travel checkout that has the word error for a particular time period. Now, most of you know that whatever is causing the error might not have the word error in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search data. I'm going to broaden my search. I'm just going to search for all the log files that have happened, let's say, in the last 30 minutes, because that error started around 9:50 something, right? So I'm just going to do a -30M here, and this is going to go and search for the last 30 minutes worth of errors, which I'm getting in here. Now, this brought back 42,000 messages, or about 1,700 pages of messages, and it'd be a little bit hard for me to skim through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the easy button. This button here called log reduce does kind of what the name says. It's reducing the number of logs, not by getting rid of them. Instead, what it's doing is it's identifying signatures. It's identifying messages that look the same and saying, okay, Mario, you've got about 3,000, or in this case, 5,000 messages that all look like this. Of course, the date is different, and perhaps the IP address is different and whatnot, but you have quite a few messages that look the same. So it just finished, and look, here's still the same 42,000 messages. In this case, I only have 3 pages because it was able to put them into categories. So let me show you. Here's an example. This one is 2,700 messages that all have this very similar information. The date will be different, and perhaps the line number is going to be different, and perhaps the URL is different, but most of the other stuff is very similar. So it understands that you probably don't care for that message to look at all the details, so it lumps them into a signature. You can edit these signatures if there's something that you want to, if there's more messages you want to collapse or messages that you want to separate, you can do that. You can upvote or downvote messages, promote or demote them, depending on if they're meaningful to you. But let's look at this. It brought back a whole bunch of messages, almost 3,000 messages that are saying, hey, you had some SSL issue. Remember we were seeing this issue, this error? As a matter of fact, it found 2,900 of them. So it's trying to tell me you have this message, and it seems to be the message that is happening quite a bit. If I look at what happened down right after it, I can see that, no, okay, this is very telling. For my service checkout, it looks like someone, perhaps me, but someone put development code into my production environment. So this is showing me that version 1.14.dev got put into production environment, which probably has the wrong SSL certificate, which is probably what is causing all my 500s to happen, because people cannot do their bookings and it's spiking my stuff. So I just walked you through a brief scenario here of how I went from an alert that I received. I dive into the relevant dashboards, and from those dashboards I dive into the logs to find out the why, what is going on in my environment. So correlating those logs to metrics, of course, there was quite some work put in place to have these dashboards in here. But that's the message to you. That's the end goal. This is where you guys want to get. You want to make Sumo work for you, rather than going into Sumo and just searching for an IP address or a username or whatever the case might be. You actually want Sumo to be doing that for you and having the dashboards in place, having the alerts in place, so that you can do this kind of analysis, and you can just focus on the value add. For example, now that I went through that motion, one of the panels that I probably want to add to my dashboard is, oh, let me get here a view of the deployed versions. So now if I had this panel already, I could have gone in here and seen, oh, look, here it's clear that someone put development version into my code. I need to address that kind of stuff. So these dashboards are, you can think of them as ever changing or dynamic, because as you address new issues that come up in your environment, you can put more monitors to keep an eye on that kind of stuff. Okay, I don't see any questions. So with that said, let me continue. Let me continue here then. So what I just showed you was the cooked turkey. I just showed you how to go from what's the end goal? What is that you want to do with Sumo Logic? But most of you are fairly new. You just started. You find yourself here, and perhaps if you've tried a little bit, probably what you did is you said, okay, let me find out the word error. Not the best search out there, but a good search nonetheless. This is coming back and saying, okay, for the last 15 minutes, you have about 6,000 messages that have the word error in it. Now, what I want to start showing you is how to start using this metadata to make better queries. But before we can even start there, probably one of the first questions you probably had to yourself was, oh, what data exists in here? I don't even know what data is available to me. So let me start you there. There's two ways that you can find out what data is in your environment. The first one is you can go to Manage and you can go to Collection. If you're an administrator, you're going to see something very similar to what I see. If you're not an administrator, you're going to see the same screen, but all this stuff here on the right-hand side to edit, to delete, it's going to be grayed out. But that's okay. For all intents and purposes, what you really care about is the stuff on the left-hand side. You want to know what data is coming into the system and what is the source category so that you can look for that data. Let's say that you want to find out if your Apache logs are in there. All you have to do is enter the word Apache, and if you have any Apache logs, it's going to show you the collectors that brought it and the sources that brought that data. So you notice this is how I would search my Apache data using Labs Apache Access. This is a training environment, therefore I called it Labs, but this is how you would do it. The second way that you can find out what data exists in your environment, it's a little cheekier. This is what you can do. I'm going to show you a little trick in here. You can say, all right, give me everything that you have, and then pipe those results into account by, and let's do account by source category, since that's one of the metadata fields that I care to look at my data for. And I don't really need 15 minutes worth of data. I'm just going to do like 3 minutes, because all I want is tell me, what I care for are these labels for source categories. So this tricky little, sneaky little query shows me that I have Zscaler data, Snort data, AWS VPC data, I have silence data, and this just gives me a list of all the different data sources that I have. There's my Apache Access data as well that I care for. So this is how you can go about discovering what data is in there. All right, so let's say that that you were tasked with starting to analyze your Apache data. Your boss came in and said, hey, we've got this new tool. Let's start analyzing that Apache data. Well, let's figure out how to get it. So how do you call that data? Well, if you guys remember my previous query, all you'd have to do is say source category equals, and that's where you would specify Lab Apache Access. You hit enter, and you get all the logs for Apache Access in here. I'm going to just show you this little guy here. This allows you to get a little more real estate so you can see your logs. And most of us, I believe most of you as well, are very familiar with Apache, so I'm choosing that one because it's a little easier for us to look at. So there you go. Lab Apache Access, you can start looking at status codes and URLs and all that good stuff. Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you is there's absolutely no need to start from scratch. There's a lot of stuff that we've already baked into the product. So if you're looking for Lab Apache Access data, here's how I would go about with it. The first thing I would do is find out if any of your peers have already done something for Apache Access. How do you do that? Well, you can go into Library, and in Library you can see your personal folder, which in your case might be empty. I've created a few things here from a training perspective. Or you could also go to the organization folder. The org folder has everybody in my organization, all my peers, and anything that they've decided to search. So for example, I could go to Latimer here and find out if Latimer has searched anything, has he made anything public, and I can take advantage of that. There seems to be a dashboard that he created. But if I'm in this org folder, I can also say, okay, show me anything that might have the word Apache in it. And the good news for me is that a lot of people have shared some Apache stuff with me. As a matter of fact, there's an Apache overview, there's all this other information here, and the cool thing is that I can click on any of these, and it'll open that dashboard, and I can start seeing it there. So in this case, I'm clicking on someone else's dashboard. Let's see who owns this. Oh, actually, I happen to own this. I've already gone through this, but this is showing me an overview of my Apache data. Notice how as a new user, I didn't even have to create anything. I just went in and I found stuff that someone else had shared, and I can see visitor locations. I can start seeing traffic distribution by server and all that good stuff. So this will populate in just a second. But my point to you is there's no need to start from scratch. It's possible that someone else already created content for you. All right. The second thing I wanted to show you, let's say that you ran this query and you got absolutely no results. Nobody has done any Apache stuff yet, and you're brand new to the system. You don't know where to start. Well, these two tiles here at the bottom should help you out. One of them is called Apps, and the other one's called Preview. These two are apps, except that Preview is apps that we just released. So we're looking for feedback from you. Think of it as the box is still open, and if you have some feedback, we can bake it into there. But essentially, what we're doing here is we have a whole bunch of out-of-the-box content for common sources. So if you're an if you're an Amazon workshop, an AWS workshop, CloudFront, S3, VPC flow logs, CloudTrail, config, ELB. So this is a whole bunch of dashboards that already will start analyzing that kind of data. Perhaps you have Apache data, perhaps you have box data, Cisco, Docker. So here's a whole bunch of sources or common sources that we already have data for, including all those in the preview as well. AWS Elastic Load Balancer for your app, CrowdStrike, Silence. Right? So my suggestion to you is when you are about to start analyzing, go in here and see if your data already exists. In my case, since I wanted to analyze my Apache data, there is an app in here called the Apache App. If I select it, it shows me all the things that would get installed if I were to choose to install this Apache. So let's say that I do. I want to click on install. It asks me, okay, how do I map to your data? How do I go about and find out what your Apache data is, or how do I filter it? And so in our case, it's pretty easy. We can just tell it, well, the source category from Apache data is this one, Labs Apache Access. If it was a little more complex, you can also always play with custom filters. For example, you could say only the data that is coming from collector ABC and where source host equals whatever the name might be, right? So you could always use custom data filters if you want, but in our case, it's pretty straightforward. Labs Apache Access. Let's say that I'm going to put this in a folder called April-May training, just to differentiate it from the one I already have in there. I'm going to put it under my apps folder, and I'm going to click on install. And what it's doing right now is it's grabbing all those dashboards and queries that it has, and it's prepending them with my information. It's saying source category equals Labs Apache Access, because that's how my data, that's how it's going to identify my Apache data. It's done. It's pointing me to go to that folder if I care for. And here I am under Personal, under Apps, Apache May Training. And look, it installed all these for me. So let me just open these so I can show you. I'm going to open the Apache Overview, the Visitor Access, the locations, the traffic. I'm going to open these, and you notice that it just opened a few new tabs here at the top, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. While those are loading, what if I wanted to look at some of these? Let's take this. Let's take this one. I want to find out what are my top 404 referrers. So I can click on that, and it's going to show me the query of how it found out the top uh, 404 refers for the last 24 hours. I can run this query. Again, I didn't even have to figure out how to run this stuff. All I had to do was run it, and here you go. It's giving me all the different refers that give me 404s. This might look a little daunting, but by the end of today, you will have a good idea what all this stuff is doing. I'm going to show you how to do this parsing. I'm going to show you how to do this where filtering, how to count, how to limit. But my point to you is I didn't even have to learn that stuff. I, out of the box, got a lot of information just by installing this app in here. All right, so just to finish up on the apps, here is what the app dashboard looks like. It took my app data and it broke it by visitor platforms, popular mobile devices, 10 PCs and versions, browsers and operating systems, visitor location worldwide versus just in the US, visitor traffic insights, so my top refers, top 10 search terms, the media types served, and you get the point. I pulled all this information, including the top 5 clients causing 400 errors and all that good stuff, right? So it went through the motions of getting my data and loading it into these pre-existing dashboards so that I didn't have to create anything. Here's the even cooler thing. What if I wanted the top 10 clients, not just the top 5 clients? Well, if I click on any of these panels, it takes me to the query behind it. So it opens that query, and now I can see exactly how that query was built. So I can always reuse any of these queries, tweak them to my heart's content. Let's say that I wanted not the top 10, the top 5, but the top 10. There you go. I just edited my query to give me the top 10, and now I can click on Update the Dashboard, and I would effectively update my dashboard with the top 10 client queries. Of course, I'd have to go and edit the name, which I would do from here with this little pencil, but now you see how you can easily go and repurpose some of the queries that already exist here. If you see something you like, you can go and find out how it was built and use it for your needs. All right, I don't see any queries here, so I'm going to assume everything is good. Let's say that so if you have any data that already exists, or any apps that we already have for the data for your data, by all means use it. But what I'm going to do now is in the next 20 minutes is I'm going to show you how to, let's say that we did not have an app for this. Let's say that I'm looking for an Apache Access data, and I have no clue how to go about analyzing it because there is no app. So I need to search. I need to learn how to filter, how to find out, how to extract fields and all that good stuff. So let me show you how to do it. Let's get back to like 15 minutes, which seems to be a little more interesting. So here it is. Here's how I call it. Now I'm pulling the last 15 minutes worth of data for my lab's Apache Access. What if I wanted the last 45 minutes? It's not in here. So all I can do is minus 45. And you get the point. Minus 45 minutes, days, hours. And the good thing is that this little bubble here shows you what you would be pulling if you choose minus 45 hours. What if I wanted to pull 15 minutes worth of data, but with an offset of 30 minutes ago? So you would do it this way, 45 minutes all the way through 30 minutes. So this is going to pull 15 minutes worth of data, but starting 30 minutes ago, from minute 45 to minute 30. And you can check it with that little bubble there. It's saying that it would go from 10:12 to 9:57, right? Okay, so that's all good. Pretty straightforward. Now, let's look at the messages themselves. So if you notice, I have an IP address, I have a method in here, I have a URL, I have my status codes. What if I wanted to find out how many 404s I have? Let's say I'm a developer, I'm pushing out code, and I want to see if I have broken links. Do I have 404s in my code? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the simple way of doing parsing, and then we'll talk about the other different ways. I'm going to just highlight these guys. I'm literally just highlighting it. And what happens is this little bubble pops up and it says, oh, do you want to add the selected text to your original query? Or more interestingly here, do you want to parse that text? I'm going to say, yeah, let's parse it. Let's grab anything that is between the word get and the word HTTP. And I'm going to extract that. And that is going to be my URL. So you notice I'm just changing things into variables, but I'm using a message as the example. So I'm going to grab the status code. This guy here is the size. Most of you have seen Apache Data, so this should be pretty straightforward. I think this is my refer. Here we go, refer. And this guy here is my user agent. So I'm just going to extract it all as one field, user agent. And you notice that when I click submit, what it does is it adds a parse statement to my query. It just says, okay, look for this pattern. And when you find that pattern, extract what's in here and call that a URL. And extract what's in here and call that a status code. And you get the point. If I run this query now, check out what happens. I still have my message on the right-hand side. So here is my message. But over here, I've extracted user agent. I've extracted URL. I've extracted status code, size, refer, and all that good stuff. Time gets extracted by default. I just don't have to mention that. So why would I want to do this? Well, because now I can do things like count by status code. And that should give me a count of all my status codes, and there's my answer. I now see that, oops, I do have a lot of broken links. So in this 15-minute time period, it looks like I have about 1,000 404s. So there might be something there for me as a developer to go fix in my code. Okay, before I continue with this, because I probably would want to find out if these happen all at the same time, what's the trend over time? Do I have a lot of 404s that all happen at once, or did they happen spread out? But before I continue, let me go back to this parsing statement here. So what I just showed you was the ability to do a simple anchor parse. I'm going to go here to the documentation and show you the different ways that you can parse your data. What I showed you was if you have a predictable pattern, we know what Apache data looks like, so we can predict that pattern and we can use an anchor. In this case, I was using the word get as an anchor, and this here shows you that UI that I just walked you through, parsing the text, extracting it, and creating the field that we want to use for parsing that text, right? Well, what if your messages are not that predictable? In that case, you can use what we call regex, and most of you probably have used regex in the past. Essentially, you say, go look for a pattern and pull that pattern. Let's take this one here for an example. In case some of you are not super familiar with regex, I'm just going to walk you through it. Before I do, I think there is a question. Let me see. Oh, sorry. It looks like it came a couple minutes ago. So the question comes from Amit. Let's see. How to correlate data from various sources and build a transactional flow. Also, is there any way to load my Visio and paint the numbers on top of it? Okay, so there's a few queries from Amit. The first query is, how do I correlate data from various sources and build a transactional flow? So right now I was kind of showing you the simple version, which is let me pull data from one source. But nothing, I mean, is keeping you from saying, oh, give me data from where source category equals that, or source category equals something else, right? So you can category equals XYZ. So you can pull data from multiple sources. That's totally fine. You don't have to just pull data from one source. As a matter of fact, you could say pull data from everything that is labs star, and that would pull data from a lot of multiple sources from anything that started with the word labs, essentially. So that's how you go about pulling data from multiple sources. Now, the trick is, what do you do with that data? You'd have to parse it, you'd have to count it, you have to do quite a few things. There are several operators that would help you. We're not going to cover them today because this is a little more introductory training, but some of the operators that I want to point you to that would do that kind of stuff, Amit, which is putting your data together. Actually, this is a good time to show you the cheat sheet. There is a cheat sheet here that shows you all our different operators. And it's broken by function. Here's all the different parsing operators, which I was about to show you. Here's the different aggregating operators. But in particular, I mean, some of the operators that you would care for is like the join. So the join operator, oops, not that join. The join operator allows you to do an outer join, and you would get data from multiple sources and then join them by some ID or so on. There's another operator called the transaction operator. Transaction operator, section, that allows you to do something very similar. It allows you to take a user ID or an IP address or session ID if you have one, and be able to to follow that transaction. As a matter of fact, closer to your question, let me just click on it. Is it clickable? Yes, it is. You can build a flow that looks something like this, a visual that looks something like this. In this case, I can see people that went from my blog to my apps to, you can see that how the traffic goes from one place to another, and map it using the transaction operator. So that's how you go about correlating your data. You obviously would need to get some ID or some way to uniquely identify this stuff. The other question is, does this tool support text message alerting? Not at the moment. We don't have text messaging alerting. What we have is alerting to anything that supports a REST API, so with webhooks to anything, to like a Slack, a PagerDuty, a HipChat, or yeah, we can do email alerts as well. So those are kind of the two main ways. There's a few other alerting mechanisms that we can have. One of them is it can call a custom script, and that script of yours can do anything you want. So if you want that custom script to do text messaging, that's something that you can implement on your side as well. All right. Cool. So I hope that answered some of your questions. So going back here to the parsing that we were talking about, we were talking about how to parse your data a little bit further. Oops, I was in the parse operators before. Let me just get back to that. If your data has variable patterns, then you can use what we call the RedX operator, and most of you have probably worked with RedX. So in this case, I was about to just cut an example from here. Let me just grab this one. In this case, it's saying look for a pattern that has a digit between 1 and 3 characters, a period, a digit between 1 and 3 characters, a period, and you get the point, right? That looks like a pattern that looks like an IP address, and store that in a field called IP address. So if I just cut that from here and paste it into my my query, notice that you can have multiple parse statements. So there you go. That is not only going to parse, oops, let me not do the counting so that I can show you this. Not only does it parse the URL, the status code, and all that good stuff, it also parsed out for me the IP address, as you see in here. So now every message has an IP address parsed, and I can now also do a why is my mouse is acting up? I can also now do a count by IP address, if that's what I wanted to do. So parsing, going back to parsing, you can either parse by using the parse anchor, as I showed you. You can parse using parse regex. If your data is in JSON format, guess what? We know what that looks like. So we have a JSON operator that can automatically parse all your JSON format. If you send us key value, meaning Mario equals name equals Mario, company equals Sumo Logic, we know what that format looks like, so we can parse it. CSV, same story. We know what it looks like. If you're sending us stuff that is delimited, say with a tab or a colon, we can use the split operator for that. If you send us XML, we can parse those things. So depending on what you're sending us, you will want to parse that data and get it into a meaningful way so that you can start doing some additional analytics on that data. Okay, one of the great things is, well, if I start parsing in every query, like I know every time I look for Apache Access data, I need these fields. So it'd be great if I could just parse them once and then be done. And yes, you can do that. There's this thing called the field extraction rule. And what the field extraction rule does is exactly that. Here's one built for Apache. Let me show you how this was built. Let me go and edit here. It said, okay, any data that is coming in that is for source category labs Apache Access, apply this parsing rule to it. In this case, I built the rule using parse regex, but essentially what it's doing is it's pulling out the method, the URL, the status code, the size, so it's doing it all ahead of time. And that way, whenever I am running my search, look at this. I don't even have to do this parsing anymore because that field has already been parsed. Therefore, oops, maybe it's called source IP, not IP address. And I'll show you in a second how to find out what the field is called. That was a good error to get so that it reminds me to show you that. But notice, source IP is now a field that is available to me, or status code is a field that is available to me, and I can just go and do my queries this way. Those fields are available because that field extraction rule is extracting those fields when the data is getting loaded into Sumo Logic. So how do I know which fields got extracted? Well, here is the story. I'm going to comment this out and just run that query here. All right, here's the simple query that I had run before, right? Source category goes lab Apache Access. Here's my results. Look on the left-hand side in here. See how I have a whole bunch of fields? Source category, source host, source name. These are all the metadata fields. But I also have source IP, status code, URL, user agent. These are all the fields that my field extraction rule extracted for me. And therefore, they're available for me to use in my query right away. Not only are they available and I can use them, the other cool thing is that if I click on it, look, it actually pulls a lot of data for me right off the bat. So there's a lot of stuff that I can do here that I can see. It shows me that my values 200 are appearing about 72% of the time. My 404s appear about 4% of the time. And I can even have some clicks here. If I want to see those things over time, I can click on this, and this is going to introduce a whole new. Sorry, let me redo that because I had put some comments out. But basically, what it did is it created a query where it's showing me. If I run that query, it's pulling that data, then it's time slicing into 10 buckets. This is literally taking this 15 minutes and just creating 10 buckets. Let me actually choose a bigger, let me say 60 minutes. So since I have 10 buckets, it's going to choose 6-minute buckets, and then it's counting the data by status code and time slice. So now I can see this a little bit better. I can see that for 9:55, I had this many 404s, and for 10 a.m., I had this many 404s, and so on. And now going from a table that is doing that kind of stuff to mapping it is super easy. I can now start easily graphing this stuff and showing what is it, how I want to graph my stuff in here. Right? You could do some very simple stuff in here. For example, let's say that you don't want to show these pink lines are the 200s, and they seem to be overpowering everything else. So perhaps you don't want your 200s. So I can say not status code equals 200, and I can do that because it already has the field status code. It recognizes what that is. So now I'm not showing the 200s. Let's say that I don't want to show the 304s either. I can just add that. And there you go. Now I've created a simple query that is ignoring the 404s. The 304s is ignoring the 200s, and it's just showing me all the other ones. And I can easily draw those in a line or in a bar chart. What if I wanted to bring attention to my 404s? All these charting options here have additional options. So for example, I can change properties and say, or let's say I can change, let's change the series. I'm going to show my 404s, which are here, as a line instead of a bar chart. And I'm going to leave it on the same axis so that now I can see all my other status codes, and my 404s just get highlighted with a line right on top of those. So in a very quick way, I just showed you how to go about and start doing some of the parsing, some of the splitting. Took a little longer than I expected, but I very briefly want to show you a few other operators that are available to you as you start venturing down this. So for example, here's one called the geolookup operator. And this geolookup operator is doing a lookup on latitude and longitude from a service that we provide on the specific IP address that I just parsed. And if I look at that, it brings back a table of a count of latitude and longitude. So that is how I was able to build those maps that you saw before, because we can take those IP addresses, the public IP addresses, and find the latitude and the longitude for those IP addresses, and then just map them in here. The other one I wanted to show you is Outlier. This is an incredibly useful one, and for those of you attending future sessions, we talk a lot about this one, especially because it's a great one for alerts. I'm pulling only those messages that have a status of 404. I'm time slicing it, meaning I want to see trends over time, and then I'm counting how many status codes I have. I'm renaming that field to server error by time slice. So if you look at this, this is very similar to what we did before. Let me out. All it's doing is it's giving me the number of 404s I have by time slice. So I looked at 60 minutes and I broke it into 1 minute slices. So that means 60 different slices here showing me a count. But then I use this operator called Outlier. And Outlier says, okay, look at server error count and calculate the standard deviation of that. And then look back 5 messages to calculate the standard deviation. I'm going to come back to these options in here in a second, but what I want to show you is I can do a graph like this where it's showing me, let me just make this a little bit bigger, it's showing me the actual data points, which is that line in the middle, and then it's showing me the standard deviations, however many I choose. If I choose 1, 2, 3, 5 standard deviations. And then the pink triangles are actual outliers. These are data points that are outside of that standard deviation. So all these levers that I have here at the end help me identify that. For example, how many standard deviations do I want? 3 or 4 or 5? If I choose a threshold of 5, it's going to be a thicker envelope here, and most likely I'm not going to have things outside of that standard deviation. You notice no triangles. If I choose that to be a 3, then that is a narrower band, and I see some stuff outside. A few other options that we can cover later on. But this is just a great way, the outlier operator is a great way to identify those things that are out of the norm, and then you can easily set up alerts on those pink triangles in here as well. Okay, so with that said, I want to show you, great, you go around, you create your queries. Let's say that we create this kind of query, and now you want to add this to a dashboard. This is the easiest part. All you have to do is click on here where it says Add Dashboard, and it's going to ask you, okay, do you want to add it to any of your existing dashboards, or do you want to add it to a brand new dashboard? In which case, all you do is you add the name. You can give it a different title if you want. It's just picking the name that the tab had, and you can click on Add, and as you might expect, it's going to create a new dashboard. Oh, I apparently already had a dashboard called Training Dashboard. Apologies. So what it did is it actually added it here at the bottom. It created a tile into my existing dashboard, which is going to populate in just a second. While that is populating, there you go. While that is populating, a couple of things to show you. You can also create tiles that don't have data, like this one. This is called a title tile. This is called a text tile, and you do it through here, a panel, I should say. It's a panel that can have either title or text, and this just gives you context of what your data looks like. You can decide to also perhaps use a different theme. Maybe you want to put this up in your operation center, and you want to have that with a different theme. You can delete it, you can start, you can refresh it. A couple of things to note. You can share this dashboard. It's already been shared, but you could decide that this dashboard is only for you to look at, or normally you would probably want to share it with your organization. You can share it with the world. What that means is you can share it with an exec in your organization that does not log on to Sumo Logic but still wants to get access to this data. So this is what this is all about, sharing it with the world. Or you can whitelist. You can actually specify IP addresses, and for that you have to go to this menu to specify who you are sharing this with. So you can create a whitelist of the IP addresses you want to share with as well. All right. Dashboards also have the ability to create filters for them. So in this case, you could create a filter like the region. I can add a filter for, let's say, status codes. I only want to, let's say that you only care to track certain types of status codes. So you can specify here that I only want to see 404s or whatever the case might be. Once you share this dashboard, the users of the dashboard will not be able to create filters. What they will see is this. They have the ability to use the filters, but they don't have the ability to add the filters or edit any of your dashboards. They can just see them. Last thing I'm going to talk about is you have the ability to turn this into live mode. What that means is right now, the way that it's in interactive mode, a dashboard has to be refreshed or you have to like run it in order for it to get new data. When you set a dashboard to live mode, it's refreshing every minute, every second or two. Therefore, in the background, it's running constantly so that you can have updated data. If you plan to have these dashboards up on an operations center, this is what you want to do. You want to switch up to live mode. Okay, last thing I'm going to cover for today is a little bit about alerts. And I think that we already had a little question earlier about alerts, but just to wrap this up, let's say that you did want to alert on these different triangles here. So I want to alert whenever there's an outlier. If I go back to the table, I can see that there's an indicator here called violation that gets set to 1 whenever I have an outlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a query that does the following. I'm going to create a query that says where this field is greater than 0. So if that field is ever greater than 0, that means I actually have a violation. In this case, I have 5 of them. You notice 1 through 5. So this should trigger an alert because I have a violation. How do you set up alerts? It's super easy to do. The mechanics are incredibly simple. After you've saved your alert, you have the ability to schedule it. In this case, I can say, yeah, I want this alert to run on an hourly basis. I want it to pull 60 minutes worth of data. And in terms of the notification, I want this alert to only fire if the following condition is met. So in this case, I could do something like, if the number of results is greater than 0, then I want you to definitely alert me. Because remember this where clause we had here. If I have no outliers, don't alert me. Otherwise, if I have outliers, meaning I have results greater than 0, alert me. And how can I get alerted? I can get an email. I can get a webhook. Remember I was talking about getting something like a HIP chat or a Slack. There's a different UI where you would go and create these connections, but that's how you could do it. You can save to index. This means take the results from this query and save them into an index so that I can query them at a later time. You can also have this integration with ServiceNow, which is a ticketing system. It allows Sumo Logic to open an incident in ServiceNow. You can send it by email, in which case you can tweak what the email alert is going to be, and you can tweak the subject and what you want to include in that message. Or the last one that I briefly talked about, you can make it call a script. So in this case, I just have one here that restarts my Apache server, but this script can be anything you want. The only trick to this is that script needs to reside wherever you have an installed collector so that we can go back to that script and call it. But that script can call other scripts. That script can take the results of the query and do something with them. It's up to you. That script could send a text message to Amit's question before. It could do whatever you want from that front. So I know I kind of rushed you through quite a lot of information in here, but I wanted to try to keep it to a 1-hour session. Let me jump here to the end. Again, these slides I will make available to you. Let me just come back to this quick little summary and take any questions that you guys have. Actually, there is a question. Let me pull up that question. So Amit's question is, what is the retention time of the raw data? So that varies by what you have purchased. I'm going to go here and show you that if you go under Manage and you go under Account, in my case, it doesn't show any information because it's a special training account. But in here under Account, it would show you what your retention period is, how many licenses you've bought for users, and all that good stuff. So it's something that you purchase. You can get only 30 days of retention or a year's worth of retention. So this is how you find out. Go to Manage, go to Account, and it'll give you that information. The next question is, can we summarize the data for longer duration? I'm assuming your question is, is the question I made still in the context of retention because you want to keep it for a longer period? Or, okay, the answer is yes. Yes, so Amit's question is, great, what is the retention period? So it could be what you specify. And then can you summarize that data and store it for a longer period of time summarized? So two things are coming out that will help you with this, Amit. One is we're coming with something called Cloud Flex, but don't worry about the fancy name. What it means at the end of the day is that you can have variable retention. Let's say that your operation logs you only need to keep for 30 days, but your audit logs you need to keep for a year. You will be able to do that. Right now, you cannot, but in about a month from now, you will be able to have multiple different retention periods for the different data. So to your question, yes, you can summarize the data into what we call a view. If you notice in here, oops, not in here. If you notice in here in a search, one of the metadata fields that is available to you, you notice how I had collector source category. There's something called a view. And what a view is just summarized data. You can aggregate data into a view and you can have that stored so that you don't have to retain your raw data within Sumo Logic. You can just retain your summarized data there as well. I hope that answered your question, Amit. Great. So going back to this, so I showed you quite a lot of information here. What you should take home with you is, yes, you can ingest any type of metrics. You can ingest metrics. You can ingest logs, whether it's structured or non-structured. You can send us a book if you want to. We'll take that book and we'll index it. It doesn't have to have any particular structure. I've showed you how to start querying, how to start analyzing. Again, these are just stepping stones for what you eventually want to do, which is you want to create your dashboards, you want to create your charts, you want to create your alerts so that you can start getting Sumo to work for you and tell you how you do things. So if I were to say any call to actions in here, oops, sorry about that. If I were to say any call to actions for you here is, one, ensure you have a robust source category. If you don't, work with your administrator. Come up with a source category that works for your environment so that you can take advantage of all those features. If you're not an administrator, work with them to set up your field extraction rules. Start extracting those fields because that's what you're going to need in order to start analyzing your data. And last but not least, take advantage of any of our existing apps. There's absolutely no need to start from scratch. We have quite a lot of data out there that should help you with that. So with that said, let me open it up to any questions. And while you type questions, if you have any, here are a few resources available to you. We have our documentation, obviously, training. Make sure you come to the next sessions that are available to you. And then we also have a community. If you have any questions out there, you can post them. You can search through our community and get answers to a lot of the other questions that some of your peers, some of our other customers have seen. And of course, you can always open a support case with us. All right, if there are no questions, last thing I'll say is try to get yourself to any of these other sessions in here. They'll be beneficial for you. There's one more question here. Can we store data on HDFS or any other internal store and then later use it for trending analysis? So the question, I mean, is can you store the data outside of Sumo so that you can do later analysis? The answer is no. If you want to analyze it using Sumo's tools, the data needs to be in Sumo. Can we store it somewhere else? Of course, we do. We do things like data forwarding, where you could put it to HDFS. We could once that data has been loaded into Sumo, you can forward it somewhere else, or you could just store it somewhere else, and when you need to do analysis, you can bring it in. But the data needs to reside within Sumo in order for us to be able to analyze that data. All right. Great. If there are no other questions, what I will invite you to do is join the Setting Up Sumo Logic or the Using Sumo Logic. Dates are listed in here. And hopefully we'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for all your questions, and have a good day. Thank you.